Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to our Venna and Power BI webinar, Business Storytelling Like Never Before. So today I'm just going to go through a quick agenda for our presentation. I don't think it'll be a full hour unless you guys are really keen and ask us lots of questions, and I encourage you to do so. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentations. Don't wait till the very end if you don't want to. I'll try and find a good break point to stop our demo if needed to ask those questions. Introductions, of course, we'll do at the beginning. Company overview for the companies involved. Demo, so most of you know who Power BI, Microsoft is, but you may not know so much about Venna, so we'll make sure that you know all about them. And Q&A at the end or throughout as you wish. So your presenters today, my name is Erica Dale. I'm a Senior Account Manager here at Newcomp Analytics. Brian Simpson is with me. He'll be our demo person today. He is our CPM, our Finance Practice Lead here at Newcomp. Newcomp Analytics, if you are not familiar with us, we are a analytics provider based here in Thornhill, Ontario. We have another office in downtown Toronto and one in Calgary as well. So we could service coast to coast North America. We are proud to be a very highly esteemed partner of many vendors, not the least of which is Venna today, and Microsoft Gold BI partner. So we're not just a Gold partner, but specifically focused on analytics and BI. And that's why we wanted to bring this seminar to you. We believe that the two technologies are really better together. We've been focused in this area since the late 90s. So we've actually only done one thing, analytics, and we do that very well. These are the 5 pillars of our organization. So these are our shameless plugs. I promise this is the last slide I'm going to tell you a little bit about with Newcomp. BI and data visualization is how we grew up, the traditional business intelligence paradigm. Budgeting, planning, and forecasting. Of course, if you're going to measure and monitor your KPIs, we've got to have a place to put them. Everybody does a plan personally, professionally, and in our businesses, we have to have a place to store that data and to do all of our what-if scenario modeling. Predictive and advanced analytics is an exciting area that we're in. It has gotten a lot easier to do this technology. You no longer have to be a doctor to do this. So we help to further our analytics journeys with predictive and prescriptive analytics. Information management, of course, that's the foundation the house is built on. We can't do any of those other 3 things without a solid foundation of trusted and governed and secure data. Open source and data science, of course, that's doing all of that with some of the more public available tools. So we want to do machine learning and AI and statistical models with some Python or R. That's the business department for Newcomp. So that's our shameless plug, less than 30 seconds, right? So a little bit about Venna. Some of you may not be as familiar with this software company. We felt at Newcomp that it was really important to partner with them for a couple of different reasons. They have a different approach to FP&A, and we were really excited by this. One of the key differentiators for us, at least, was that they're Canadian. They're based downtown Toronto, so we can get in our car and go down and talk to them. So we really like that. They also really embrace Excel. So a lot of other vendors will have you try and take you away from Excel, say, oh, Excel is the root of all evil almost, to refer to Excel hell. Well, in fact, we want to have you embrace Excel. A lot of times customers, you can see on this slide, customers who have deployed other solutions are still running their companies. 84% of them are still running their companies on Excel anyway. And, you know, really, what are the other 16% doing? Maybe they have their head in the sand a little bit, right? So we find that Excel is everywhere. It's pervasive. People know how to use it. People embrace it. So we want to take that knowledge, take that IP, and bundle it up and put some wrappers around it for governance, for security, for workflow. You already have these skills, so let's just fill it out a little bit and add that what-if scenario modeling and those controls that are needed for the Office of Finance to help make your life a little bit easier. And because we use Excel as the front end for authoring, it's a lot, you know, it makes it easier for building templates, reports. We can do it in very flexible, familiar environment. All the features and functions that you're used to, they're right there. You're not missing anything. And it doesn't matter whether it's thick client Excel or Office 365, we don't really care. I'm going to just build this slide out, but I think it's kind of a clever graphic. So we see when we go into customers or a client site, we see that they've got these little point solutions. You know, I've got a point solution for financial close or narrative reporting. I've got a point solution for budgeting and forecasting. I've got add-ons for doing monthly close or monthly reports. With Venna, we can really do all of these things with the same tool. And I really like that about the solution, that it's really one solution that fits many, many requirements in the Office of Finance. The central repository will allow you to have the control, security, and management for those processes as well. And it has a really nice, elegant, and easy to use workflow that helps you to manage the people and processes around all of those data points and data elements that I think is sort of lacking in Excel, but you will get that with Venna. So I think that that's kind of a neat feature. Again, I'm going to build this out. Brian has a saying. I'm going to steal your thunder here, Brian. But sorry, finance. It's not just all about you. We can do all of these things for the Office of Finance, but we can also do other things like sales reporting, operation planning, supply chain planning, anything that has planning around it, then it can help you with. So it really is an end-to-end planning and what-if scenario modeling tool. So that's what I really want you to have in mind as we go through the demo. So those are our 3 sort of soundbite slides on Venna, just to give you a little bit of a background. Again, Venna is our one solution for all of these particular pain points that we find. Microsoft, everybody knows Microsoft, but you may not be familiar with all of the power that you have in Power BI. One thing that, as I mentioned, you have Excel as your front end for Venna. Excel is great, but not so visual. So we want you to be able to visualize your data everywhere you go. We want it to be just pop off the page. We want it to tell the story. We want you to be able to have salient points and data points literally just beg to be touched. And that's where Power BI comes in. So by marrying the two, by setting your KPIs and targets in Venna and then adding Power BI on top, you can really tell the story. Like I say, they really are better together. So Power BI provides you with that fast, easy access to your data with a bunch of different visuals, a bunch of different features and functions. They're even starting to bring in some light predictive into the tool. It allows you to access it anywhere, mobile, doesn't matter, and allows you to drill down within the data on the fly. So last little bit here, I'm just going to tell you a little bit where you can find more information. We've got some instructor-led online or in-class courses. The in-class courses happen here at our office at Leslie and 7 in Thornhill, but you're welcome to take those online as well. So these classes, you can just reach out to training@newcomp.com if you'd like more information. You'll get these slides as a follow-up also. So anything that you'd like to know about setting things up in Azure, please reach out. These are kind of interesting boot camps. This is our last slide for today, but these boot camps are for people who just want to go a little bit deeper on a particular topic, but are not really sure where they want to go. So things like APIs or data science, you want to just understand a little bit about a topic or a product, just let us know and we can help set you up with these one-day boot camps or half-day boot camps. And I think that's it for slides right now, Brian. So I think I can make you the presenter.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Erica. So I'm going to take the rest of this webinar to walk you guys through a demo of Venna, just the standard demo of Venna. And we're also going to do a demo of Power BI connecting to Venna data. So I'm going to start off with the demo of Venna in case anyone on the call hasn't seen this before. It's a great demo, pretty straightforward. If you have any questions along the way, please drop them in the questions box in the GoToMeeting. Okay, so you can all see here, I'm on the login page for Venna. I'm in a browser. This is Chrome. I'm connected to my Venna cloud server, and I'm going to log in to my demo instance now. Now, I'm logging in as a regular contributor to the budget, so not an administrator. My name for today is Frank Jones. And when Frank Jones logs in, he is presented with essentially a task list. This is a list of all the items that he has kind of on deck for his work. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this this New York expense budget. Now, I've got a due date listed here. I've got actually one item that's overdue from 4 months ago. I'm going to pretend I don't see that for now. And I've got a couple of weeks to complete the rest of these budget items. If I scroll down, I've also got a few items that are reports that I can take a look at, and we'll come back to those in a minute. So I'm actually going to start with my New York expense budget, and I'm just going to click on that. Now this pops open a window on the right-hand side of the screen that tells me a little bit of detail about what I need to do to complete the New York expense budget. And up on here, you can see I've got some instructions, if there's any instructions, some supporting documentation, and then sort of two main forms that need to be completed to finish this New York expense budget. I've also got a submit button up here to send it in, but we'll come back to that when I'm done. So I'm going to focus on the OPEX planning form here, and I'm going to click checkout. And you'll notice hopefully that when I did that, it downloaded a file here, an Excel file that I'm now going to open up in Excel. And I'm going to let Excel open. It's on my other screen right now, so I'll just move it over to this screen in a second. If it lets me. And as Erica mentioned, Excel is our primary interface of choice for working with Venna data. And so what we get here is an Excel add-in that gets installed on my machine. Here we go. And the Excel add-in comes with this toolbar. It also comes with full connectivity into that Venna cloud environment. And so I've got a Venna cloud server. All the data that you see on this template is a live connection to that centralized server. And so when I open up this template, it was loading that data, essentially downloading it into this Excel sheet. So the data doesn't live in Excel. So this is my OPEX planning sheet. On here, I've got a number of accounts that I'm responsible for doing data entry in. You can see I've outlined up at the top sort of my budget for 2021. We're starting that a little bit early this year. That's okay. This sheet also has some additional information, actuals in it that I'll show you in a moment. And it's been preceded. So we're not doing a zero-based budget today. We're starting from a logical starting point of last year's budget being rolled over to this year. And so that's given me a template that's sort of already got details in it, as well as comments that have been rolled over from last year. Now, as the budget manager for this particular area in New York, I'm working in my sales and services department. It's my responsibility to make any changes to this budget that are required. And the first thing that I'm going to notice is I'm actually missing budget data for my first 3 accounts. I can see here in my actual column for the prior year, I've got data in these accounts. And so I probably should have a budget for 2021. And so doing data entry in here is really straightforward. It works exactly like you would expect Excel to work. And so I can come into any of these cells, type in a number, push enter, and it's going to push that in. Now, a couple of things have happened when I pushed enter on that. First of all, I've got some validation rules configured that are turning the comment red and basically just saying like, hey, you know, if you're going to put data in this advertising account, there needs to be a comment applied to it. Just tell me essentially what you're spending that money on. We'll deal with that in a moment. As I would expect Excel to work, I can do cutting and pasting of data. So I can grab this data here and just sort of drag it across August and paste it in, no problem. I can also do formulas in here. So we can say, you know, let's make December equal to the sum of May through August, for example, just as a simple Excel formula. And all of the regular Excel type of data entry and formulas and cell linking, that'll all work in the system. Now, as I mentioned right at the start, the data doesn't live in Excel. If I want to send this data back to the Venna database, I can actually push this big Save Data button up in the corner. You'll see it's loading, and up pops the warning. So I had mentioned before that red comment is going to give me a problem. It's saying, hey, you need to fill this in. These thresholds and the warnings that we see up on the screen are all customizable, as well as where we put those red fields. Not to mention the colors are customizable as well. So we're using this color coding scheme for blue cells are data entry and red cells are bad. So I'm going to write a comment in here for advertising saying new ad campaign. And I'll push enter on that, and you'll see that red cell clears out. Now, one thing you'll notice on this is a very first thing I noticed when I saw this demo, is this template in Excel is beautiful. Venna's done an excellent job of designing these templates, laying them out in a logical way, leveraging a lot of the newer Excel features like the spark lines you can see over here, like the conditional formatting, like the variance little slider thing here, the check marks and the X's to give me a visual indication of where there are problems on the sheet. They're leveraging expanding and collapsing groups. So an exceptionally well-designed template. And the good news for you guys is Venna shares all of these templates with you. So if you want to leverage what you see on the screen, Venna has what they call Vena paths, which are starting points for your project. I really like this OpEx planning template. It probably needs to be customized with your chart of accounts, of course, but otherwise it gives us a huge head start when doing implementations. And so we can leverage all of the assets that I'm going to show you today as part of your implementation. Now, a couple of other neat things to show you in here, things that Excel can't do. Let's say I wanted to put in some budget data for promotions. I can see we were at about 16K last year. So I actually want to do data entry into the full year for the budget. And I'm going to do a data spread. So up in the menu here, I have this My Functions button. And in here, I have an option called Spread. And my favorite type of spread here is using prior year values. And so I'm actually going to click on prior year values. And we're going to put in 1600 and push adjust. And so instead of spreading this evenly across the 12 months, it's actually going to go look up the prior year values for the account that I specified and set the weightings equal to those prior year values. So it's a really quick way to spread data into the system using historical data. And of course, if you're an Excel guru, you probably recognize that that's not super easy to do just in Excel natively. Now, a couple of other things to show you. I had mentioned that we have actuals in this template. So I'm going to scroll back over to the right and expand the actuals. Now, I've hidden these just to make best use of the screen real estate, but we've included all of the actuals up until a current period. And sorry, I've set the current period into the future. But we've got all these actuals in the system here. Now, first things first, if I try and type into them, you'll notice that the Excel sheet itself is protected. I can't change those numbers from the template. There's no way as an end user that I can change the actuals, so that's good. But more importantly, I can get at more detail if I want. And so a really cool capability in Venna is the ability to click on any one of these numbers and choose to drill down. And so if I wanted to drill into transactions that make up this number, I have this drill button in the Venna toolbar, and I'm going to click drill. And then I'm going to choose transactions. And what Venna is going to do is going to go fetch all those transactions for me that come out of the relational database, out of that source system. And it's going to create a temporary sheet for me in this workbook called Venna Drill Sheet, and just give me a list of all those transactions that make up that number. So that 5,989 is 4 different transactions, and here's all the details. And obviously that drill is customizable to pull whichever fields are relevant for your source data and your business. This is just a temporary sheet. I can delete it if I no longer need it. I'm going to do that. Now, another really neat feature with Venna is we have the ability to add rows, of course. I'm just going to collapse my actuals again. Let's say for this account consulting fees, I want to store more records for more details in here. So there's a button right up in the toolbar called Insert, or Insert Line Item Detail. And when I push that on the account, it's actually going to give me an additional line where I can put some more details. And so we could say this is for analytics consulting. And now I have the ability to put data in here as well. So we can just put data in the line item and spread it across if we choose. And then we can add or remove as many additional lines as we need. And so this is a really great way as a budget manager that I can store additional details in my plan. When I submit, it's going to submit the summary line. So that's what's ultimately going to flow into that 6002 GL account. But it gives me the ability to store that additional detail. In addition, if I really wanted to do some extra sort of scratch pad type of detail, I can always create a new sheet and do any type of data entry I want anywhere in this sheet, and take any of these numbers and sort of link them so that I can do this times this, and take a number like this one and then link it into a sheet. as you would expect to be able to do with Excel. Sheet 2 here, we'll link that one in. And so that'll populate this cell. Now when I save data, it's going to send that number. Now I've got a couple of options with these templates. If I close this one, you'll notice it's got a sort of a unique name, a randomized name here. If I close it and check it back in, that sheet is going to disappear. But I have the option to set this up such that those sheets are preserved and those sheets actually get shared with others. Now that's really meant for temporary work, or I call it a scratch pad. But we always have the option of including additional supporting sheets to enable users to do planning in a little bit more detail. So I've got a few examples of that. The first one here is this travel sheet. So let's say that my business has determined that we're going to do travel planning at a greater level of detail than just the GL account. So we've created a new travel input sheet. We're listing out all the expense details, who's taking the trip, where we're going, rental car, airfare, meals, etc., and taking all of these details and sort of rolling them up into an account 6301, which will ultimately be used to populate this sheet. And you'll notice that these numbers match, and that account is actually in white because it gets planned somewhere else. So this is a really great way of giving users the ability to plan in more detail elsewhere. We also have a couple of unique ways to do that that aren't specifically related to a specialized sheet. A number of the accounts on this OpEx planning sheet are actually driver-based. And I've hidden them for now because there's only a few, but I did the pop out on these columns here. And you can see I've got a couple of accounts that are based on a driver. So I've got a few drivers that I've built into the system. These could really be anything you want, things like headcount or revenue or prior year. And then taking an amount and using that to sort of run some math. And we've got a formula, just a standard Excel formula in there to leverage that driver. You may have noticed when I clicked on that drop-down, one of the drivers was predictive. And we've actually leveraged some of the Excel predictive capabilities to create a predictive planning template. This is specific to an account for repairs and maintenance, where the user can work with some of these configurable parameters to come up with a scenario that matches sort of what they're looking for from a predictive point of view. And then we're using Excel's visualization engine to kind of draw this on the screen for me. So that's a really powerful capability as well. Now, as with any planning template, of course, we would want to enable users to provide commentary or even attach supplementary files. And so you may have noticed there's a comment button up in the toolbar. And when I click on this, I get this sort of comments pop out on the right-hand side of the screen. And in here, we can click the big button to add comments, where I can add a comment on a specific cell or on the entire sheet. You'll also notice I have the ability to attach a file, and we can just click attach file and then upload a file to this template as well. That's a really unique way of allowing users to do their own work sort of off on the side or include supplementary documentation and essentially provide that record into the system. Now, speaking of records in the system, one really great piece of functionality in here is the Audit Trail. So we have a few different ways that we can audit some of this data. The first is looking at any specific cell on this sheet. We can choose to drill into all of the different records, the past history of that cell. So I'm going to choose to drill down on the saves, and you can see that it's going to bring up a history of that cell. Now, there's only been a couple of changes on this one. So actually, this one, until I push save, there's none. Let's pick one where we've actually done some changes here in the past. And you can see here, it'll say the date that change was done, the user that made the change, how they made it, and the value. And if there was more history, it would show all of that history here. So a really great way to see who changed what, where, and when, and make that available to the users so they don't have to go hunting for it. Now we can actually take that one step farther. The Audit Trail button here allows me to actually look at an audit for the entire department. So this entire OpEx planning sheet, every single time it's saved, a snapshot is taken. And so I can actually click on the last snapshot that occurred. And if I wanted to compare this, I'll go back to one in January. I actually have the option to compare the two. And when I do this, it's kind of like the Microsoft Word comparison where you get the red lines everywhere and the black lines. This is Similar idea, it's going to open up 2 copies of this template, and it's actually going to highlight where there are changes made. And it's going to use the Excel formatting and commentary to kind of show me what the value was and what it is now. And so I've got a copy of the new template, and it has also opened a temporary copy of the old one. So I've got basically a snapshot of those 2 templates at that moment in time. That's a really cool piece of functionality. You really should never be in the dark as to where the numbers came from. Now, a lot of the numbers on this template actually come from a different template. And so a great example of this, if I expand this salaries and related area that's collapsed here, this is included on the OPEX planning template for information only, but all of this is planned in a separate labor planning template. Now I can actually click on any one of these numbers as well, and if I wanted to essentially see the data lineage of this, I can drill on this one too. And so I'm going to do drill on saves again. And in this case, it's going to tell me, hey, you know, this one has a new value of 580,000, and it actually came from a different template, labor planning. So of course, I can click on this and click view. And assuming I have security permissions to drill into salary information, I can absolutely open this up, and it's opening on my other screen again. We'll just give it a second, and see this entire template and sort of drill into where that data came from. And so this template, just opening, this is a big template. This one looks like this. And so this is my labor planning template. I do have access to it, so I can actually see where that data came from. And this template is, of course, designed a little bit differently, but it's got all of my staff on here for existing employees, all of their salaries. My employees, as you can see, are paid very well. And as we scroll down, I've got an area to enter new employees. Now, this template, like all of the templates in the system, are highly customizable. We can modify these to meet your business requirements. Not everyone plans labor the same way. So this is really just an example, but also a starting point that we can leverage. And some of the templates also include like summary reports on them. So here you can see that was the number that I drilled on, and you can kind of see it highlighted here. Now, each of these templates is opening up from the system, but I have the option here to just close this out again and return back to where I was. Now, I'm essentially done with making my edits here. I've put in some advertising dollars and some consulting fees, so I'm good with that. Now I save the data. I don't have any validation errors left on here, so I'm going to push save. And that is essentially sending all the information that I've saved. You can see it's saving that audit trail information, and it's sending it up to that centralized cloud Venna server. And so now that that's done, I've saved it. I have the option to close this one out and move on to CapEx, or continue to explore and do some more formatting. One thing that I do want to point out that was missed right at the start when I opened it, because it was on my other screen, if I have access to other areas of the business, I can actually click on this choose button, and it'll give me the option to filter differently. And so as Frank Jones, I've got access to every department in New York, and so I could open the same template for all these different departments and fill them in and save them. But for now, we're okay having filled out the sales and services. So I'm going to close this template. We've saved the data already, but I'll save it again just to make sure. And the last thing I'm going to do when I return back to the web portal is, and we don't have to save the template itself, I'm going to check the file back in. That makes sure that I'm the only one working on it. And the last thing that I can do is click submit. Now, before I do that, I do want to pop open a couple of additional templates just to kind of round out the demo, just to give you guys some examples. And then I'm going to show you some reports, and then we're going to jump over to the Power BI dashboard. So just a few more of the templates, because I think these are great to see, and to see how we do different types of planning for different areas of the business. Again, all these templates are customizable. They're all something that we can merge into your business requirements. This one, I'm just going to select the default parameters there and open it up. So the CapEx input is really meant for, in the context of the budget, inputting any new capital requests I may have. In this case, I've loaded all the existing assets into the system. And by the way, all of the actuals you saw on the last template, And all of these existing assets, those get into the system through an automated process called extract, transform, and load. And really, we are connecting to either cloud data sources or on-prem data sources and importing that data into a staging area in sort of an automated way, so that it's always available to the users when they open the templates. They always have sort of up-to-the-minute actuals available. And we like to automate that process. It's one of the biggest gains you can get from implementing a tool like this, as opposed to just using Excel natively. So we can automate all that data flow. So in here, if I scroll down, I've got my blue area available for data entry. I've already filled this out, all my new capital requests for the year. As you would expect, we've got drop downs to configure all the different asset types. I've got purchase and in-service dates, purchase prices, asset lifespans, justifications. All of that's customizable if you like. We're even including details on whether they've been approved or rejected, as well as approval comments, and some little visualizations on their usage schedule. So a very well-designed template again, and again, customizable, and then a summary as well, so that we can take a look at all the asset types and see sort of all of their values and depreciations on one screen. So I didn't make any changes here. I'm going to close without saving, and we don't need to keep the original template, but I will check it back in. Now, a couple of others, I've got some other tasks here that I'm responsible for. I've actually got a lot here that I'm responsible for. We looked at two of the sort of the core planning templates. When we look at revenue, this is one that tends to vary depending on the organization and what you sell, essentially. But we've got specialized templates for, revenue by product. We've got subscription revenue and SaaS-based revenue templates. And again, all of this is something that can be made available to you. Here, I'm just going to, again, select the defaults. And this template essentially builds up to revenue by customer. So there's quite a few tabs in here, but we'll just let it download the data, and then we'll take a quick look here. So here we, in this case, we're planning by labor and materials. Each of these is essentially an item that I can do data entry for. And I'm just going to step through these tabs pretty quickly. We can sort of build up the input costs if we want, so go down to a low level of detail, put in some counts, and have it drive all the details across the fiscal month. And then we can do this for every single product. So this is quite a large template. We can incorporate some pricing strategies that look at margins and use those assumptions to then drive some of the details. Bring in historical data and then project out our volumes, gather any inputs from users around, bulk orders and things like that, ultimately driving towards some reports around COGS impact and revenue by customer, probably the most important report that's the output of this. So that's a very high level overview of how we might do revenue planning and how we might build a template up, in this case for selling products like tablets and smartphones. So I'm going to not save this one again, but we'll check it back in for the next time. You may have noticed this entry here, admin templates. And even though I'm not logged in as an admin, I just want to show as kind of a manager of finance how I might control some of the centralized drivers or some of the more advanced finance processes like allocations. And so no planning process would be complete without some form of allocations, whether we're doing expense allocations or revenue allocations. And so of course we can do all of this in the Venna solution as well. And so we've got some pre-built templates for this as well. And I'll accept the default inputs on this. By the way, you can see as I'm opening these, it populates them pretty quickly. They're about a 5 or 10 second open time where it's downloading the data and downloading the template itself. So the performance is exceptional. We're really happy to see that it performs really quick, because obviously we know that users can get impatient. So I'm happy to see the system's performing well. Here we're doing allocations by driver. So I've got some overhead departments, their amounts, and then a driver that I've identified as the allocation driver. We're then allocating across these different regions. So I've got departments in each city here that I want to allocate to based on that driver. And then we can go into each of these departments and sort of see how that allocation is being driven out from corporate down to the different regional departments. And so that's all built into a workbook, typically deployed to specific users that might want to, to work directly with allocations and manage that process. Okay, so we'll check that one back in. The last thing I want to show here is the reports. So I'm going to actually scroll down. These are available all the time. They don't really have a due date. They're just something that I can open anytime. I'm going to click on this finance and operational reports. And you can see in here, I've got a whole bunch of reports that I have access to. Most of them are Excel, but I've got a Word executive report pack. I've even got a PowerPoint presentation in here. But there's some pretty neat ones in here. I'll start with this corporate dashboard. Even though I'm going to show you dashboarding in Power BI, of course, we can use Excel to do some pretty basic dashboarding. So we'll open this one up and take a look. And these are, again, directly connected to Venna. And these are live real-time data that we can filter. So I'm just going to open this one up and give you a sense of what a dashboard might look like in Excel. Excel can do a pretty good job of this, but you'll see with Power BI that we can do even better. So I'll show you that in a moment. So this dashboard is pretty straightforward. We're just bringing in some key metrics, showing some visualizations, and then breaking it out into a couple of different areas. So this would be our main strategic overview, and then we can go into specific financial health. We've got an operational dashboard, people dashboard, and customer health. So this is all driven off that live data that I was working with earlier. And these dashboards can be made available to any or all users. We can even leverage and reuse the same dashboard if users only have access to specific departments or entities and specific scenarios. So the same dashboard can be reused across those components. The next one I want to show you here is the financial statements. Of course, this is a very important component of any budgeting or planning system, is the ability to generate these financial statements. And these ones are in Excel as well. So they are exactly what you would expect to see. We'll just open this one up. Typically, we are delivering your standard income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. You can see these are also made available for any entity and any department. I'm going to pick sales and distribution, which is a sum of essentially all of the different locations below. I was previously planning in New York, but I'm taking it up a level now so that I can see the entire entities, P&L and balance sheet and cash flow. So again, we're downloading the data and making it populate the Excel file. And so this is my P&L. For larger account structures, we have the ability to drill up and drill down. And so we can just double click on a cell to drill up or drill down. And we represent this hierarchy in Venna, and make it available to the users to kind of navigate through. So P&L and balance sheet and cash flow. All of the calculations for these, especially on cash flow, can be built into the solution. So if you've got existing templates that you're happy with and they have all the logic in them, we can reuse those. That's a huge advantage. If you hate your existing Excel templates and want to get rid of them, we can redesign them. So that's an option as well. Okay, I want to show just one more thing, how all this is driven, this whole process with its due dates. I have another user logged in as the administrator. I get more options in the Vena portal, but the part I want to show is how we create this workflow, because I think this is a game changer for Venna. We lay it out in a flow chart, and this is really helpful for visualizing how your planning process works. So we've actually drawn the planning process. I was previously working in this expense planning box, and I can actually double click to jump into it and see the one that I was working in was New York expense budget. So I can see how this works. It goes for review. If it's rejected, it comes back and eventually gets to the end. And so this process can all be mapped out. It can be drawn in a very logical way, and it can have due dates and assignments attached to it. And so this is a really great way of modeling your business process and making sure that it can all be managed in the system. Okay, so I'm going to flip over now. I've shown you kind of a high level.
We actually have a couple of questions. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sure, let's do it.
Yeah, well, one of them I'm not entirely sure you're going to know the answer to, and I know you love it when I do this to you. So just the person who asked this question they know that we might have to take this offline. The second question, I know you're going to answer, you're going to know the answer to. So the first question is, what's the back end of Venna?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's a combination of technologies. Right now, it's hosted on AWS. There's a database sitting behind there, and I'm 95% sure it's MongoDB. But it's a collection of technologies in the back end that's driving this, as well as Excel and Office-related technologies to drive the front end Excel ribbon. But that, at a high level, that's what the back end technology looks like. It is designed, of course, for scalability because it's cloud enabled and cloud first. It's designed for essentially unlimited scalability, so you shouldn't have any issues in terms of the performance.
Yep, and then you mentioned that it was cloud, so is there a Canadian presence?
Yeah, so there is a Canadian presence. As you mentioned before, Venna is a Canadian company based here in Toronto, so there is a large Canadian user population as well as Canadian data centers.
Yeah, and one more just came in. Is ETL also part of the product? Great questions coming in.
It is, and I actually kind of skipped over that quickly, but I'm here as the administrator. I have a couple of tabs at the top, including this modeler tab. This is where, by the way, we would basically build in our chart of accounts. This one would have been imported using ETL. I wouldn't want to build this out manually. But there is ETL built into the product, so I've got an ETL tab here that's going to list all of my ETL jobs that are available. I've also got integration, which is sort of direct integration with a select few systems, with more coming. So, for example, I've got direct integration with Salesforce. I've also got direct integration with a number of popular ERP systems. And when we say direct integration, we mean it understands the underlying data source. So if you look at this Salesforce one, there's a query here to pull a bunch of data out of Salesforce, and I get this sort of preview of it. So there is ETL built right into it.
That's great. That's the questions for now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so changing over now to Power BI. I'm going to minimize this one. So Venna has recently enabled a direct native connector working in cooperation with Microsoft for Microsoft's Power BI to connect directly to Venna. And so I'm going to open up Power BI Desktop. For those that aren't familiar with Power BI, it is a data visualization tool where we can build dashboards like the one you see on the screen. And Erica gave you a brief overview in the slides, so you'll get those screenshots as well. The cool thing here is that Power BI supports a whole bunch of different data sources. And one of those is now Venna directly. And so here's all the data sources I can connect to. And somewhere in this list is Venna. And so what that means is that Power BI speaks to Venna directly without any special configuration or any underlying table structure understanding. I can just point to my Venna instance, provide my authentication, and away we go. We can connect into that Venna data. And so that is a very powerful capability there. Otherwise, I'd be working with APIs and worrying about how to do it myself. So the fact that they've done all the work for me and put this built-in connector in there is a game changer. So I've built this dashboard already. This is the desktop version, but I was actually going to demo it. I've published it to the web. And this dashboard is built on that same data we were just looking at. Now, I've got a million different ways that we can visualize it. I've built out a number of tabs across the bottom. But if you're not familiar with Power BI, it is a very interactive dashboarding tool. And so I'm looking at one of my high-level accounts, EBIT, and I'm looking across my organization by entity and by department. And this dashboard is interactive. And so I can click on manufacturing, for example, and you'll see all of the other metrics and charts will change and filter based on what I've clicked on. And so as I click around on the dashboard, I can kind of navigate through it and get a different sense of where each sort of department or entity has its data. And so this is what I mean by highly interactive, and you can see it's performing really, really well, right? It's not loading for a query. I've also got some global filters here on the right. So we're looking at actuals right now, but if we wanted to flip the whole dashboard over to the budget, you'll see the whole thing shift. We can even change the date range here to filter on different dates. So we have unlimited capability to build out these dashboards however we like. The look and feel, the colors, the layout, what information we choose to surface, how we interact with it is all customizable. Power BI, as you guys probably know by now, is a market leader and industry leader in the data visualization space. They have been for a long time, and Power BI is very accessible to your users, particularly if they already use Microsoft Office. There's a number of tabs across the bottom that kind of show off different capabilities. So I'm just going to click through some of these. Sometimes we might choose to focus in on a specific account or a set of accounts like operating expenses. Here again, we can click on any of these boxes to filter really quickly. I'm using some really neat type of charts here. So even though this looks like a pie chart, when it's not filtered, you'll notice that it kind of does this radial effect when I click on any of the filters, kind of showing me how much of that slice of the pie each box represents. So that's a really neat way of filtering. Of course, we can do the same on any of the charts to click on a year, or we can even click on a point in the line chart here. You may have also noticed this little gray area representing my forecast. So we've used Power BI's forecasting capabilities to enable that. It's providing a fairly broad range, of course, but it's looking at the historical data and forecasting out into the future what it believes the future numbers will be. And of course, each of these marks on all the bars and the slices and the boxes, they all have tooltips as well. So as I hover over them, I can see the different values. We also have the option of building a couple of different styles of reports. This one's changing the layout a little bit. I've taken my income statement and dropped the whole thing into a dashboard. Now, this gives me the sort of expand collapse. It's not as pretty as the Excel-based one, of course, but if I wanted to incorporate that data into the dashboard and make it interactive such that the user can drill up and drill down on the raw data itself, we have the option to do that as well. Same for balance sheet. And then ultimately, the whole purpose of using Power BI is to create these sort of compelling visualizations, to surface up key metrics, and to make it interactive so that users can click on it and really see the data and tell a story with it. And so this whole dashboard, despite being a number of different tabs, our team here at NewComp built this out in maybe a day or two. And that was with, as a first draft, working with the underlying data and understanding sort of what we were looking at, and then building out all these tabs. So Power BI is meant to have a low barrier of entry, something that any user can really work with, and build some pretty visuals in it. We've also got some advanced capabilities that we've enabled in Power BI. So I've got things like my key influencers. So what influences my values are really just my dollars. So what influences them to increase or decrease. And it's doing some behind the scenes sort of AI type of analysis and looking at that particular question and then coming up with an answer for me. So what causes dollars to increase? Well, if the subgroup, which is a product, is C900, then it's likely the dollars is going to be high. Otherwise, it says it's basically on average. So it's doing some neat little analyses there. I've also got top segments and bottom segments, so we can do some segmentation. And we can even ask it questions. So I've got this Q&A tab where we can type in a question like, what is the average dollars by account? And it's just going to go list out all the accounts for me and give me the average, and I can see the actual values. And then we could, of course, take this one step farther and incorporate these little ask a question boxes onto a bigger dashboard where we then do filtering based on what you see here. So these are using some of the more advanced natural language processing capabilities and predictive capabilities in Power BI to drive some additional value out of it. And then, of course, as a published Power BI dashboard, you have all of the options that you would expect out of the Power BI workspaces, which includes adding commentary, creating bookmarks on certain dashboards, subscribing to them so that you can get them sent to you or get a link sent to you, associating them with other dashboards so that we can see what's related. So lots of capabilities in the Power BI web portal. And then quickly jumping back to the desktop, this is where I actually create the dashboard. And you can see I've got all my fields here. This is all the data that's being pulled out of Venna and made available to me. So as a dashboard creator, I've got the full power of Power BI at my fingertips to create whatever I want in here. So that's our Power BI component. Very exciting for us. We're very thrilled to see that Power BI has got that direct connection now. And we see big things, big potential with that in the future for all of our Venna projects. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any further questions. Erica, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, there's one question here. Is all the data coming from the database or the multidimensional models behind these Power BI reports?
It's all coming from the Venna database, sort of the central database. So that's a good question. When I pull the data, if I click on this data tab, you can see here I've got all these sort of tables. So here's like my account table, for example. And this is essentially my chart of accounts and its associated hierarchy. And then I've got all these different tables, including my fact table, which has all my different dimensions, and then my details for my actuals, budget, and forecast. Now this is a very simple demo model, so there's not a lot in there. But for a real organizations model, you get full access to all the data that's in Venna. So it's really powerful capability. And then of course we can start bringing in. Sorry, I was just going to say we can incorporate other data in here as well. So we've linked all this data together, but we actually brought in additional data to provide labels and whatnot on all of our codes. So we can incorporate new data in here, whether it's from Venna or from another source, and link it in as well. And now we're getting into the some of the more powerful aspects of Power BI, but we have the ability to incorporate additional data.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like we can take the budget from Venna, for example, and then hit lower level detail, perhaps in Great Plains or something like that, right? And marry the two together using Power BI. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And really, I'm really just showing, like, scratching the surface on the power of Power BI, no pun intended. But the sky's the limit with this. There's unlimited amount of cool things you can do in here. I could do a demo just for the full hour just on Power BI. So there's a lot of exciting features in here.
Venna, right?
Correct. So there's a lot of power under the covers here to create some very compelling visuals, to bring in data, to transform it and position it on the dashboard. So lots of capabilities there. Any other questions there?
That's all we've got in the moment, so we can take a few more. That seems to be it for now. So with that, I think we should wrap up the webinar. Thank everybody so much for your time. If you do have more questions, you'll be getting the slides, and both Brian and my contact information is in there. Please feel free to reach out at any time. We're happy to help, happy to go deeper. I do have one person that we do need to go a little bit deeper with on the Venna side, Brian. They're asking super hard questions, so where it would go past the time limit that we have for today's session. And so please don't hesitate. We're happy to take that offline and go talk about the needs that are specific to your particular organization. So Brian, thank you so much for putting this together. This is super informative and really, really great demo and very effective presentation. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for your time and attention. We really appreciate you spending your valuable time with us. And again, do reach out if you have any questions. Thanks for now and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.